On behalf of the school board, administration, and staff of Hayfield Community Schools, welcome to this informational video on the 2017 bond referendum. This discussion will focus on question 1, and in particular, some of the infrastructure revitalizations that will occur at the district. This video will not focus on the process used to develop the $24 million worth of high priority needs, nor will it focus on the process used to evaluate a finance mechanism called Qualified Zone Academy Bonds, or QZABs, leaving the remaining $14.3 million of remaining needs. That information is found elsewhere in other video publications. As alluded before, the bond referendum is broken into two questions. Question 1, which focuses on revitalizing facility infrastructure and improving some of the learning environments at the school. And question 2, which focuses on site safety and security, along with some enhancements to the student activities and community spaces. Again, this video is focusing on question 1, and more specifically, the need for revitalization of the facility infrastructure. If you were to look at question 1 and those components that would be considered to be revitalizing aging and failing infrastructure, it would really break down into these elements, including indoor environments, flooring, building envelope, site work, plumbing systems, technology, and finishes. We'll talk about each of these categories in depth. First, indoor environments. This leads us to a different discussion. Obviously, some of the improvements that will be made are covered under the QZAB bonds, as well as some of the items under question 1. Relates to the learning environment in indoor environments, it's important to note that there is a building number of research projects that correlate the quality of the indoor environment with student performance. Let's first talk about indoor air quality and some of those correlations. It has been known for some time that as the quality of air improves, students do better, and the contrast is true as well. Recently, studies have been done on measurements of carbon dioxide and correlating that with human performance. This illustrates a study done by the University of California at Berkeley and recently confirmed by Harvard University. What this illustrates is that levels of carbon dioxide build in a space, and of course these are the byproducts of breathing. We've always considered this to be a worsening of the indoor air quality. We're also now learning that human performance degrades to a point where one could consider human performance in a multitude of areas to be dysfunctional, almost as though we were inebriated. The carbon dioxide levels in many of the learning spaces at Hayfield schools. These are illustrated on the map shown. Red would indicate that these are areas where likely human performance has degraded, and yellow are cautionary areas, and of course white are areas that had not been measured. We find similar results in the elementary school, where again indoor air conditions would lead one to believe that human performance has been degraded. Temperature and humidity. We all know that when we are at the warm end of the temperature and humidity scale, we might be a little bit more lethargic, a little less motivated. Research also tells us that as we gravitate towards more humid and hot conditions, that we are more susceptible to illness. One of the reasons that we experience difficulties is, first, the type of heating systems contained within the buildings. What this illustrates is the type of heating distribution in the high school area. Those areas indicated in red are served by steam. The problem with steam, it's an obsolete heating medium, and one of the reasons it's obsolete is that it's always 212 degrees to remain in a gaseous state. That means if you happen to be the individual sitting next to the heating register, you are sitting next to 212 degrees. It's for this reason that oftentimes you'll note that windows would be open even in the middle of winter. There are some uncomfortable individuals in those spaces. On the other end of the spectrum, about 1/4 of the school year involves days when heating is not required. In contrast, on those days, oftentimes the building can become very warm in areas that lack mechanical cooling. Those areas that you see marked in blue have mechanical cooling. But as you can see, a majority of the high school lacks air conditioning. And we've learned over time that when the conditions in these spaces become uncomfortably warm, we detract from the learning process. We asked staff about their perception of indoor environment, and as you can see here, as it relates to odor and the amount of air and the temperature and humidity, there are some areas of concern, especially as it relates to temperature and humidity in the space. Acoustics. One of the things that we've learned over time is that the acoustical qualities of a learning space are extremely important. This is due in large part to the fact that roughly 60% of learning takes place involving speech, that among students or among staff and students. Design professionals would tell you that they design for levels of 35 decibels or lower, meaning that if no one is talking in the room, that's the background noise. As I'm talking, I am talking at roughly 45 decibels of sound. As you could see by the measurements that we took in this particular science classroom, levels exceeded 50 decibels in many situations. That's akin to having someone continuously speaking in that room, which, as you might imagine, would interrupt the learning process. As we measured the other spaces in the school, you'll find that again, background levels of noise were in caution or alert conditions, meaning that likely in those spaces, the learning process is interrupted by mechanical noise. Beyond indoor environments, things like aging infrastructure, things like flooring also came to mind in the view of architects and professional engineers. Specifically, we found that there was bubbling of the vinyl composite tile flooring throughout the elementary area, that the elementary carpet had been worn to a point where perhaps it's in need of replacement, that there were some issues with the metal flooring in the freezer and cooling area, or cooler area, and finally, in the lower level locker room, there was complaints about slip and fall hazard. These are identified more on this map, which identifies the type of flooring and the troubled areas that were observed by the assessment professionals. Building envelope. Building envelope is an encompassing term for what encloses the building. That might be doors, windows, roofs, and walls. A couple of the major things to talk about is the elementary wall, where we're experiencing bowing and separating. Our industry professionals identified that these walls were not reinforced properly during construction, and now we're starting to see bowing. The good news is that we are able to rectify this issue with additional reinforcement. Some of the classroom windows throughout the facility, especially those in the lower level north area, are in need of replacement. The same would be true of the elementary classroom windows. Some of the exterior doors are showing signs of age. Some of the mortar joints, tuck pointing, and so forth have deteriorated, have been patched, but are in need of repair. And the roofing system is scheduled for replacement. In fact, there are components of the roofing system which are well beyond scheduled replacement. Site work. It's important to keep, as one knows, in their home environment, water away from the building. There are many situations where water is infiltrating the foundation of the building, and improvements would be made to make sure that we are appropriately removing water from the site. We would remediate water underneath the bubbling tile floor. That we anticipate that there will be some water issues, so we would remediate water in the tunnels below the facility, as well as those areas causing trouble for some of the flooring. And then other site improvements would include increased security associated with enhanced sidewalk lighting, and then removing trees in the front of the school, as directed by the state of Minnesota. Plumbing systems. Various issues with plumbing systems, not the ability and lacking the ability to remove waste from many of the restroom areas. In other areas, we don't have the appropriate supply piping, so that there are various issues relating to the plumbing systems that would be rectified during this referendum. technology. Some of these systems are well beyond life expectancy, are now obsolete. It's almost impossible to find telephone parts for the existing telephone system. The intercom system is intermittent at best, and there's need to enhance the camera access system to improve site security. Finishes. And places like the home economics, the cabinet and countertop have exceeded useful life and are showing signs of deterioration. The original wood doors are again showing signs of deterioration and are in need of replacement, and the same would be true of some of the restroom partitions.
One of the questions I've gotten is, why ask for a building bond now? I promise you this, I didn't get on the school board with the intent of asking you, the voters, for a building bond, especially within my first year. However, after touring the facilities and getting input from our staff, it became clear something needed to be done in the very near future.
Hi, I'm Ron Evian. I'm the retired superintendent from this school district. I spent 35 years in this district as a student and as a former administrator. I love this school district, and in the past and the present, we have provided a great place for a student to get an education and a great place to work for our employees. But it's time now, if we're going to move on into the future, to upgrade our facilities.
We've gotten by with patches here and Band-Aids there. However, we're at a point where that isn't enough anymore. Interest rates are at very reasonable levels, very favorable at this time, somewhere in the 2 to 3% neighborhood. Therefore, financing the balance of the project is at a good time right now. With the ag tax credit and the reduction in the state general tax, many rural districts will be looking to pass building bonds in the very near future.